All right, today we're jumping into one of the most powerful and, frankly, game-changing ideas in all of cognitive science. Noam Chomsky's theory that we are born with the ability to learn language already hardwired into our brains.
So, let's start with a puzzle, one that is truly mind-blowing when you stop and think about it. How can a toddler, who can barely tie their own shoes, master the incredible complexities of a human language? It's a feat that even our most advanced supercomputers struggle with. So how on earth do they do it?
For a long time, the leading explanation for this puzzle was actually pretty simple. Maybe a little too simple. And as we're about to see, it didn't really square with how kids actually learn to talk.
On one side, you had the behaviorist view, most famously championed by B.F. Skinner. The idea was that kids are basically like little parrots. They imitate the words they hear, and they get positive reinforcement, a smile or praise, when they say something correctly. But this theory has a massive hole in it. Kids don't just copy, they create. And more importantly, they make these really fascinating creative mistakes. For example, a child might say, "I drinked all my milk." Now you know for a fact they've never heard an adult say drinked. So what's going on? Their brain is actively trying to figure out the rules of grammar, like adding ed for the past tense, and it's just over-applying that rule. That's not imitation. That's an active mind at work.
And this is exactly where Noam Chomsky entered the picture and completely turned the tables. He argued that children are not blank slates waiting to be written on. Instead, he said they come into the world pre-equipped with a kind of universal blueprint for language.
At the very core of Chomsky's theory is something he called the language acquisition device, or LAD for short. Now, this isn't something you learn, it's a part of our biology, a shared human inheritance. You can think of it like a specialized processor that's built into the brain from birth, and it has one single powerful purpose: to learn language.
So if the LAD is the hardware, what's the software it's running? Well, according to Chomsky, that would be universal grammar. This is the radical idea that all human languages, from English to Japanese to Swahili, share a deep underlying structure. This universal grammar contains all the fundamental building blocks, like the concepts of nouns and verbs, so the LAD uses this universal framework to make sense of the particular language a child happens to be born into.
Okay, so let's see how this all works in practice. A child is hearing English spoken around them. Their LAD takes in all that sound, and using the universal grammar, it starts to set the specific parameters for English. Think of it like flipping switches on a circuit board. One switch is for word order. The LAD hears subject, verb, object over and over and flips that switch. Once enough of these switches are set for English, the system comes online and the child can suddenly generate an almost infinite number of new, grammatically correct sentences they've never heard before.
But you might be wondering, why did Chomsky believe such a complex innate system had to exist? His key argument, and it's a powerful one, is based on a concept he called the poverty of the stimulus.
So what he meant by this is that the actual language kids hear day to day is, well, it's a mess. It's full of slang, interruptions, and half-finished sentences. The input is impoverished. Chomsky's point was that there's simply not enough clean, clear data for a child to logically figure out the incredibly complex and subtle rules of grammar from scratch. So, he reasoned, the basic rules must already be in their heads to begin with.
And this brings us right back to the magic of creativity. This innate grammar is the engine that allows a child to go way beyond just mimicking what they've heard. It's the reason they can create a completely novel sentence and have it be perfectly structured. This generative power is something that the simple imitation and reward theory just can't explain. Okay, so the theory itself is compelling. But is there any hard evidence out there in the real world that language is actually a biological instinct?
As it turns out, there are several fascinating lines of evidence that supporters point to. We're going to look at the idea of a critical window for learning, the incredible way new languages can be born, what neuroscience tells us, and how kids all over the world seem to follow the same playbook.
The critical period hypothesis is the idea that there's a biological window of time, usually in early childhood, when the brain is uniquely primed to acquire language. The most powerful, though deeply tragic evidence for this is the case of a girl known as Jeannie. She was discovered after being severely isolated for the first 13 years of her life. And even with intensive therapy, while she was able to learn words, she never fully grasped the rules of grammar. Her story strongly suggests that the brain's window for acquiring grammar had already closed.
You can also see this innate drive in action with the creation of Creole languages. So imagine a situation where adults who speak different languages are forced to communicate. They often create a simplified bare-bones language called a pidgin. Now here's the amazing part. When their children grow up hearing this simple pidgin, they don't just learn it. They spontaneously and automatically add complex grammar and structure, turning it into a rich, fully formed language we call a creole. It's like their innate language acquisition devices are taking limited input and building a complete language just as they were designed to do.
Now, as revolutionary as Chomsky's theory is, it's not without its critics. And perhaps the biggest challenge to his ideas comes from its lack of focus on what seems like the most obvious part of language: other people.
The main criticism is that Chomsky's model is very abstract. It paints a picture of the child as a kind of lone scientist analyzing data in a vacuum. It largely ignores the rich, social dance of communication, all the games, the pointing, the back and forth between a child and a caregiver, which provides the crucial context for learning. The case of a boy called Jim illustrates this point perfectly. Jim was a hearing child, but his parents were deaf, so he got most of his language input from listening to the TV and radio. According to a pure Chomskyan view, that input should have been enough to activate his LAD, but it wasn't. His language skills were severely delayed. It was only when he started interacting one-on-one with a speech therapist that his language took off. This shows that mere exposure isn't enough. You need social interaction.
This led psychologists like Jerome Bruner to propose a fantastic complementary idea: the Language Acquisition Support System, or LASS. If Chomsky's LAD is the innate hardware we're born with, Bruner's LASS is the crucial social software provided by our caregivers. It's the way parents use baby talk, play turn-taking games, and create a scaffold to help a child connect words to the world. It's the support system that makes the whole thing work.
So, where does this all leave us? Is it nature or is it nurture? An innate program or social learning? Well, the modern consensus is that it's not a case of one or the other.
Today, the view is best described as innately guided learning. We are absolutely born with a powerful biological predisposition for language. That's nature's gift. But that incredible potential needs to be activated, shaped, and brought to life by the rich social world we're nurtured in. You could say that nature provides the blueprint, but nurture is what actually builds the house.
And really, this isn't just an academic debate locked away in a university. To truly understand it, we need insights from neuroscience, linguistics, psychology, the works. And what's fascinating is that this very same debate between built-in rules and learning from data is playing out right now in the development of artificial intelligence. How much do you build in, and how much can a machine learn on its own? Which leaves us with the final thought to ponder. As we try to build machines that can talk, we're forced to ask a fundamental question about ourselves. Is language a biological gift we simply unwrap when we're born, or is it a social tool that we are constantly building together with every single conversation? The real answer, it seems, is a beautiful and complex yes to both.